Descriptive grammar. So the term descriptive grammar refers to an objective, non-judgmental description of the grammatical construction in a language. So it's objective and non-judgmental. We have discussed that prescriptive is judgmental, do this and don't do that. But when we study descriptive grammar, we see that how language is being used. So we make an objective study of the language, not being judgmental. It's an examination of how language is actually being used in writing and in speech. We don't say that don't use, for example, double negative. If, for example, an English speaker uses it, then it means that it's part of the language. It should not be followed by any rules of logic. So it's a descriptive approach to language. Specialists in descriptive grammar, they are linguists, examine the principle and pattern that underlie the use of words, phrases, clauses, and sentences. So they simply say that a sentence consists of a subject and a verb phrase. So a noun phrase and a verb phrase, and now verb phrase consists of a verb phrase and a noun phrase. So this is how they elaborate, they explain language when they look at the way language is being used in any society. Kirkhazen notes descriptive grammars do not give advice. They don't say use this and don't use that. You cannot end a sentence with a preposition. You cannot begin a sentence with conjunction, etc. They detail the ways in which native speakers use their language. Say they are observer. They make an objective study of the language. They look at the way people use their language and they simply describe the language the way it is being used. A descriptive grammar is a survey of the language, right? So it's simple to understand that how descriptivists describe grammar. For any living language, a descriptive grammar from one century will differ from a descriptive grammar of the next century, because there is always a change in the way people use their language, right? So a descriptivist will observe that how language is used at a certain point in time, right? The linguist makes a synchronic study of the language. He or she sees that how language is being used in a certain point in time, let's say in the beginning of 19th century and at the end of 19th century, in 20th century. So they simply say that how people used or use their language. Descriptive grammar is the basis for dictionaries, because dictionaries need to be compiled according to the use of the language at a certain point in time, right? Which record changes in vocabulary, how people start using words in a different meaning, how they are constructing different structures and usage, what is the usage, and for the field of linguistics, which aims at describing languages and investigating the nature of language. So descriptivists simply observe or survey language. The term descriptive is a little bit misleading, as descriptive grammar does provide analysis and explanation of the language's grammar and not just description of it. So for some time this can be misleading, because they simply explain how the language is being grammatically explained by the people of that linguistic community. We can contrast descriptive grammar with the prescriptive grammar, which notes how something should or should not be used, and what is right and what is wrong. We have just cited a few examples in which what is considered wrong and what is considered right. Prescriptive grammarians attempt to enforce rules concerning correct and incorrect usage. According to Donald, all languages adhere to syntactical rules of one sort or another, but rigidity of these rules is greater in some languages. So there are some rules to use syntactic rules. But in some societies, in some linguistic communities, there is rigidity that that people suggest how language should be used and how it should not be used. It is very important to distinguish between the syntactical rules that govern a language and the rules that a culture imposes on its language. So this is very important. Actually, prescriptivists stress on the language that or language rule which are suggested by the culture. People of that certain linguistic community suggest that use this and don't you use that. Whereas the descriptivists simply study the syntactical rules that governs a certain language. People spoke long before there were linguists around to uncover the rules of speaking, right? So people know how to use their language. They've been using it for time immemorial. Prescriptive grammars, on the other hand, are the stuff of high school English teachers. I mean, it is suggested or it is said that prescriptive grammar is in vogue or stressed more by the high school English language teachers. The sentence "I ain't going" will be considered incorrect by the English language teacher. Similarly, "who did you arrest" would be considered incorrect, and "whom did you arrest" will be suggested. Similarly, "what are you waiting for?" it ends with a preposition, so it would be a incorrect sentence for "what are you waiting." So this will be considered correct sentence. "I saw several octopuses at the beach." So octopuses must be octopi because it has come from Greek language. So I saw several octopi at the beach. So these are the rules of correct and incorrect grammar, bad and good grammar, or the grammar of the English language teachers. So descriptive grammar consists of rules that all speakers of a speech community adhere to, barring speech errors, right? So we can precisely say about descriptive grammar that it is the grammar that consists of rules that all speakers of a speech community adhere to or use. Linguists are usually more interested in such rules as they are reflective of the properties of actual language, not ideal language. Ideal language is that of the prescriptivist. So practical or actual language is the language of the descriptivist. So descriptivists look at language how it is being used by a certain community without being judgmental and being objective.